going on, everyone? I wanted to touch base with you really quick. As always, I try to really encourage you guys to follow USARK for a number of reasons. And in this case, it helped me to bring this message to you, which is that right now, Connecticut is one of the states that's got something going on in the action alerts. And the only reason that I'm aware of that, even though I am here in Connecticut, is because of USARK and because USARK posted on their Instagram page and because they send it out in their newsletter, which you can sign up for via email. So as always, there's links in the description. So make sure you go to that, take a look at this action alert. They've done a really great job of outlining why it's problematic, why it's redundant, why it's unnecessary, and how we can go about fighting it. And so it's important that we make a lot of noise on this, just like every other one. Obviously, it's even more so important for me because it's where I live. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about this one with you guys a little bit. I'm going to share some pictures throughout this of experiences that I've had here in Connecticut educating people. And if this were to pass, that opportunity would be lost. And so to me, that's a really, really big deal. And I want you guys to make sure at some point, whether it's now or after or towards the end of the video, jump down in the comments and I want you to tell me what got you into keeping animals, into wildlife, into conservation, into anything animal related. What is it that drove you to care about these animals, other animals? Because this is not reptile specific. The language in this is very, very dangerous because it's too broad. And so first of all, obviously the link will be below, but the bill is HB 5293. HB just meaning House Bill, that's where it's being introduced. And so what I'm concerned about is the language, because basically what they're trying to say that they're doing with this law is basically, you know, they don't want people beating elephants at the circus traveling around, which obviously none of us do. And so they use that as this is what this is going to do. But the problem is the language allows it to be really ambiguous and to allow it to cover a lot more ground. And where that really comes into play is that they say not only are the animals listed going to be banned, but it's not limited to that. And the language specifically says any animal that they consider non-domesticated. Well, snakes are not considered domesticated, nor are many mammals that we keep, bird species, all kinds of animals. I know for myself, probably some of my most memorable moments growing up were when people would come to our class and come to our auditoriums and gymnasiums and do these programs. I remember E.T. the Owl specifically from when I was probably 6 or 7 years old and thinking he was just so cool. And, you know, I remember specific experiences where I couldn't tell you the type of bird, but it flew up and they had the basketball hoops raised in our gymnasium. We had a very tall gymnasium. Of course, the bird flew up and perched on there. And, you know, it was a whole experience for us kids. Like, oh, wow, you know, look at him up there. And to watch him fly across the gymnasium and see the grace and power that this bird of prey had was a really, really cool experience. And those in-person experiences that are tangible are, for me, what got me into animals and drove me towards that, although I was into it before that as well. And a lot of people, that's where they get their passion for conservation. That's where they get their passion for wildlife. That's where they get their passion to care about rhinos in Africa they've never seen, or all these things, because they had a tangible experience, whether it be from a zoo, whether it be from, you know, TV in some cases. For some people, they get that kind of sensory effect. But a lot of people, it's hands-on experiences with close-up encounters with these animals. And snakes are no different. We've changed a lot of people's minds by being able to go out into a classroom, into a Boy Scout troop, into a church, into a daycare center, whatever it is that's putting on these programs and allowing us to come in, birthday parties. We've changed a lot of minds with people for these animals, and at least gotten them thinking, and to watch an animal like this interact with you and to see the relationship that you have with these animals, and that it is possible, and that these animals aren't out to hurt anybody and they're not mindless killers. And it goes beyond reptiles. It's mammals, it's birds, it's so many other things, amphibians, whatever the case may be. And so with the language within this, because they're considering, you know, any traveling act And an act is simply something that entertains people. It doesn't even have to be for a profit or for money. It can be a free program. Is still going to be illegal underneath this if it were to pass. And that's where the issue comes into play. So even if you wanted to go out for free and educate people, if you were doing so with an animal that was not considered domesticated, you would be subject to this law if they chose to enforce it. And education is our best defense. It's our best offense. Everything about it is how we get people to understand these animals. That's what my channel is about, is teaching people about these animals and the relationships you can have with them and how cool they can be. And like I said, it goes beyond the species that I keep and the animals that I keep to so many others. And so please make sure that you, at the very least, send an email to some of the people that are listed below in the USARK link to contact. Always, always, always be polite. Try to be as eloquent as you can. You don't have to get fancy, but make sure that they understand that this is redundant. We already have laws in Connecticut that are going to handle animal cruelty and mistreatment of animals. So we don't need another law that you're trying to stop something that already is prevented by existing laws. So there's literally no point to this. All it's going to do is affect good people that are trying to educate the public. It's going to affect you wanting to have someone come over with some animals for your kid's birthday party. That's not going to be allowed anymore if this passes. Even though it's in the privacy of your own home, even if they're not charging you any money, these animals are not allowed to travel for that purpose. They're basically going to be limited to veterinary trips only. And how long does that last before they change the laws there? Because we know with things like the Lacey Act, you can't even go across state lines to seek vet care. So it's only a matter of time before they further refine it or create more redundant legislation that further restricts what we're trying to do. I know from living here, we don't really have a problem with people traveling around with animals and putting people into dangerous situations. I've never seen it. I've never heard about it in this state. I've done a lot of educational programs here. I know a lot of people that have done a lot more. Never seen anybody put anybody in a compromising position. I know I never have. My biggest thing when I'm doing educational programs, even with animals I trust, I always have myself in a position where if something goes wrong and the animal gets nervous or defensive, that I'm going to take the brunt of that and not the other people. And that's really important. And obviously with a small harmless animal, it's one thing where you can hand it off to a person. But like if I have an adult Burmese python, I'm not going to hand that off to somebody else. I'm always going to have control of that animal in a fashion where if something happens, I'm going to be the one that suffers any consequences and not anyone else. And not only that, but not just for the people, but also for the sake of the animal. Because if the animal goes after me, I know how to react. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to do anything that's going to hurt the animal. I'm going to react in a way that I need to keep the animal safe and myself safe. Whereas somebody that's not used to that could panic and damage the animal as well as themselves. And so that's really important. That's really key. So if you are doing educational programs, you always need to be mindful that you need to keep everybody safe, the animals and everyone else included. And you should be looking for ways to keep yourself safe, but obviously at some point you're going to open yourself up to some level of exposure when doing anything with an animal. Even when it's walking your dog, you're opening yourself up to that animal getting panicked and attacking you. It can happen. Is it likely to happen? No. But people, for whatever reason, feel like these animals are more likely to lash out of nowhere than those animals, and that's not necessarily the case. Any animal at any given time, including myself and yourself, can react. So please go ahead and read that through. Please go ahead and make sure you message as many of the people on this list as you can. Keep up on that Lacey Act as well. Make sure that you're messaging people for that, making phone calls, sending emails, doing whatever you have to do, handwriting letters, sending them snail mail. The more times they hear, even from the same person, the better. We really need to make sure that they are aware that the public does not want this, and make as much noise as we can, especially with elections coming up at some point. They're going to be at least somewhat mindful to that. So let's try to shut this session down and stop them from doing any more of this stuff. And make sure you hit those comments and tell me what got you into animals, because I'm curious how many of you had experiences like I did at some of these programs in school, in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever it was when you were younger. What got your kids into it? If you're older, you have children, and your children are getting into these animals or other animals, what got them into it? Do you like having those programs come to your school or to your work or wherever it might be? So hit those comments and let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the pictures throughout of some of the programs I did. All of the pictures that I put on here are older pictures, so the ones that include children, those children are much older now, and obviously there was permission when those photos were taken to be used and whatnot. So I'm not exposing anyone's children or anything that hasn't allowed them to be photographed in that position, and nobody is within 5+ years of the age you would see in those pictures. I just want to clear that up before people are like, oh, you shouldn't share pictures of children. I get that. Safety is a priority for everyone, especially children. So I just want to make that clear. But these programs really are a big deal with kids, because they are impressionable and they are at that age where they're open to learning new things. Adults can be a lot harder to switch their perception on something. Kids are much more open, especially when you give them an experience, a tangible experience. You can't substitute that, you can't replace it. And so they're trying to take this away all over the country. These things keep popping up, and these AR people that are pushing these know that they're leaving the language open to interpretation intentionally, whereas these legislators have no idea what they're looking at, and they're just tunnel vision. This person saying, oh, we don't want elephants getting beaten at the zoo, or being kept in some tiny cage in poor conditions and not being treated well. Animal cruelty laws already exist to cover this type of stuff. We don't need redundant legislation that's just going to damn people that are trying to do the right thing and not do any additional harm to people that are already doing things they shouldn't be doing. So hit those comments, let me know what you think, and do as much as you can, please, guys. If you're not following USARK, I don't know what you're doing. Even if you're not a reptile keeper, they really put this legislation out there that has to do with animals in general, and they're probably the best unified front we have in the private sector for animal keeping. PJAC is wonderful on what it does, but it's really kind of focused more on the professional setting. So for private pet owners and things like that, USARK is really a good resource. So at least check it out. At least make sure you sign up for the newsletter. They don't send you spam emails. They don't send you garbage. I've been signed up for years. They have never sent me an email that wasn't pertinent to something to do with what we're doing. There wasn't ever any emails where it was just constant spam emails. It's once in a while when stuff pops up, let you know about some reptile shows on occasion, and they're going to let you know about legislation. So please follow that. Join as a member if you can. Even if you donate in other avenues, membership numbers are important. Really shows how many of us there are that care about this kind of stuff. If you need help getting a membership because you can't afford it, reach out to me anytime that I have some extra money. I've been more than happy to purchase memberships for other people where I can, or maybe I can find somebody else that's willing to help you out. We want to get as many of you involved in this as possible, because it's all or nothing right now. We're really under a lot of heavy fire the last couple of years especially, and if we don't push back hard enough, it's just going to keep sliding downhill. We've got to get some footing somewhere and start that pushback. So thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.